The small-town diner was alive with its usual morning buzz. The smell of fresh coffee and sizzling bacon filled the air, mixing with the low hum of chatter from regular customers catching up on their day-to-day lives. Sunlight streamed through the windows, casting golden patches on the worn wooden tables that had seen countless cups of coffee and plates of pancakes over the years. It was a place where everyone knew each other, or at least thought they did. That's why heads turned when he walked in. Alexander Hartley, or Alex as most people used to call him, hadn't stepped foot in this diner for nearly 5 years. Back then he was just another face among the crowd, a young guy trying to make ends meet while dreaming big. But now he looked like someone out of a magazine cover, polished shoes, an expensive suit, and eyes that carried the weight of the world. He wasn't alone either. Holding his hand tightly was a little girl, no older than 6, her bright eyes darting around curiously, as if taking in every detail of the room. They chose a booth by the window, away from the main flow of traffic, but still visible enough for everyone to see. People whispered behind menus and napkins. "Is that really Alex?" one customer murmured. Another leaned closer to confirm, nodding slowly. Yes, it was him. The same man who had left town after making millions, and losing his wife 2 years ago. Everyone remembered how Claire passed away after a long battle with cancer. They remembered the obituary in the local paper, the photos of her smiling beside Alex, and the fundraiser held in her honor. But what brought him back here, and why now? Behind the counter, Mia Thompson watched silently. She'd only been working at the diner for a few months, so she didn't know much about Alex beyond the stories she'd heard from co-workers and regulars. Still, there was something about him that caught her attention right away. Maybe it was the way he sat stiffly in the booth, staring at the menu without actually reading it. Or maybe it was the faint tremor in his hands as he reached for the sugar packets. Whatever it was, it made her curious. When it came time to take their order, Mia approached the table cautiously. She gave them a warm smile, hoping to ease some of the tension hanging in the air. "Welcome back," she said softly, addressing Alex first before turning her gaze to the little girl. "And hello to you too. What's your name?" The child beamed up at her, clearly less guarded than her father. "I'm Lily," she chirped, swinging her legs under the table. "Nice to meet you, Lily," Mia replied, jotting down her drink choice before looking at Alex again. "And what can I get for you, sir?" Alex hesitated for a moment, his dark eyes meeting hers briefly before dropping back to the table. "Just coffee." "Black," he muttered, his voice barely above a whisper. Something about him struck Mia as off, not rude, exactly, but distant, like he was physically present but mentally miles away. As she walked back toward the kitchen, Mia couldn't help but glance over her shoulder. Through the gap between booths, she could see Alex leaning forward slightly, resting his elbows on the table. His shoulders were hunched and his expression was unreadable. Beside him, Lily played idly with the salt shaker, humming a tune under her breath. They seemed like two puzzle pieces that didn't quite fit together anymore, like the life they once shared had been shattered into fragments neither of them knew how to piece back together. But there was something else too, something Mia couldn't quite put her finger on. Most people saw Alex as a tragic figure, a man who had lost everything and come crawling back home. But Mia noticed things others missed. The way he avoided eye contact when someone greeted him, the slight wince whenever someone mentioned his late wife's name, the tight grip he kept on his coffee mug, as though afraid letting go would leave him completely untethered. Something wasn't adding up. And Mia had a feeling it wasn't just grief weighing him down. Over the next few days, Alex became a regular fixture at the diner. He always arrived around the same time, usually with Lily in tow. Sometimes they ate breakfast, other times they simply sat nursing cups of coffee and orange juice. Each visit followed the same pattern: polite conversation, minimal interaction, and an unmistakable aura of sadness lingering around them like a shadow. Mia found herself drawn to them in ways she couldn't explain. She started paying closer attention to their habits, the way Lily clung to a locket around her neck, rarely taking it off even when washing her hands in the restroom. The way Alex ordered the exact same meal every time, a plain bagel with cream, cheese. Despite the wide variety of options available, even the smallest details intrigued her. Why did he always sit in the same booth? Why did he seem so uncomfortable when strangers tried to engage him in small talk? One afternoon, during a lull in customers, Mia decided to test the waters. Carrying a fresh pot of coffee, she approached their table and refilled Alex's cup, without asking. When he thanked her quietly, she seized the opportunity. "You know," she began, keeping her tone light and casual, "this place hasn't been the same since you left." For a split second, Alex froze. Then his lips curved into a faint, almost imperceptible smile. "Yeah, well." He trailed off, shrugging awkwardly. "Things change." "They do," Mia agreed, leaning against the edge of the table. "But some things stay the same. Like these booths. They're still as sticky as ever." She laughed, lightly, hoping to break the ice. To her surprise, Alex chuckled too. It was soft and fleeting, but it was real. "Some things never change," he echoed, glancing around the room as if seeing it for the first time in years. Encouraged by the brief connection, Mia pressed further. "So, what brings you back after all this time? Business? Family?" Alex's smile faded instantly. For a moment he looked like he might answer honestly, but then the walls went back up. "Just needed a change of scenery," he said evasively, reaching for his coffee cup again. Mia nodded, pretending not to notice. "The shift. Well, we're glad to have you back." As she walked away, however, her mind raced. There was more to Alex's story than met the eye. Much more. And Mia couldn't shake the feeling that whatever it was eating him alive from the inside out. Over the next few weeks, Alex and Lily became a familiar sight at the diner. They came almost every morning, sometimes lingering for hours, other times leaving after just one cup of coffee. To most people, they were simply another pair of customers. Nothing out of the ordinary. But Mia saw things differently. She noticed the little cracks in Alex's carefully constructed facade, the subtle signs that hinted at a deeper pain he was trying so hard to hide. It wasn't just his quiet demeanor or the way he avoided eye contact when someone asked about Claire. It was the moments between conversations, the long pauses when he stared into space, lost in thought, the way his hand trembled ever so slightly as he stirred sugar into his coffee, the faint shadows under his eyes that suggested sleep didn't come easily anymore. These details might have gone unnoticed by others, but not by Mia. She had always been observant, the kind of person who picked up on things others missed. And something about Alex tugged at her heartstrings in a way she couldn't ignore. Lily, on the other hand, was an entirely different story. Where her father seemed burdened by invisible weights, the little girl radiated energy and curiosity. She loved chatting with Mia, sharing stories about school, her favorite cartoons, and the games she played in the park. Sometimes, she'd pull out coloring books and crayons from her backpack, spreading them across the table while Alex sipped his coffee in silence. Watching the two of them together was bittersweet. There was love there, no doubt about it, but also a distance that felt unnatural for a father and daughter. One day, during a particularly slow afternoon at the diner, Mia decided to try connecting with Alex again. She brought over a slice of pie on the house, setting it down gently in front of him. "On the house," she said with a warm smile. "Consider it a welcome-back gift." Alex looked up, surprised. For a moment, he hesitated, then nodded. "Thanks," he murmured, cutting into the pie with deliberate care. Mia lingered, leaning against the booth. "You know, I've heard a lot about you since I started working here," she said casually. "People say you're some kind of genius when it comes to business. Built your empire from scratch, huh?" He gave a small, humorless laugh. "Something like that. They also say you left town because you wanted something bigger. Is that true?" she asked, keeping her tone light but curious. Alex's fork paused mid-air. He glanced at her, his expression guarded. "I guess you could say that," he replied evasively. Then after a beat, he added, "But sometimes what we think we want isn't what we need." Mia tilted her head, intrigued. "What do you mean?" He shrugged, looking away. "Just, life has a way of teaching us lessons we don't expect." His voice softened almost to a whisper. "And sometimes those lessons hurt more than we're prepared for." The conversation ended there, but Mia couldn't stop thinking about his words. What lessons had life taught him? Was it the loss of Claire? Or was there something else lurking beneath the surface? She didn't push further that day, sensing he wasn't ready to share. But the seed of curiosity had been planted, and she found herself watching him even more closely during their subsequent visits. As the days turned into weeks, Mia began noticing patterns in Alex's behavior. He was polite but distant, answering questions with vague responses that revealed nothing personal. Yet there were moments, fleeting glimpses, when his guard slipped. Like the time Lily dropped her juice box, spilling orange liquid all over the floor. Instead of getting upset, Alex knelt beside her, helping her clean up. For a brief moment, his face softened and he smiled. A genuine, unguarded smile that made him look years younger. Another time, Mia overheard Lily asking him about her mother. "Do you miss Mommy?" the little girl asked innocently, clutching her locket tighter. Alex froze, his fork hovering above his plate. When he finally spoke, his voice was hoarse. "Every day," he admitted, reaching out to squeeze her hand. "But she'll always be with us, okay? Right here." He tapped his chest lightly, over his heart. That exchange stayed with Mia long after they'd left the diner. It was clear that Alex adored his daughter. Yet there was a tension between them, an unspoken sadness that neither knew how to bridge. And then there was the locket. Mia couldn't help but wonder what significance it held. Did it belong to Claire? Had Alex given it to Lily as a keepsake? Whatever the answer, it seemed to hold immense meaning for both of them. One rainy afternoon, when the diner was nearly empty, Mia decided to take a chance. As she cleared their table after lunch, she knelt beside Lily, who was busy doodling on a napkin. "Hey, can I see your necklace?" she asked gently. Lily grinned, proudly holding out the locket. "Daddy gave it to me," she explained. "It's special." "Special how?" Mia prompted, opening the clasp carefully. Inside was a tiny photo of Claire, smiling brightly against a backdrop of flowers. Her heart clenched at the sight. Turning the locket over, she noticed an inscription engraved on the back, "Forever loved." "It was Mommy's," Lily continued, unaware of the emotions swirling inside Mia. "Daddy says it reminds us that she's watching over us." Mia closed the locket gently, handing it back with a soft smile. "It's beautiful," she said sincerely. "Your mommy must have been an amazing person." "She was," Lily exclaimed, beaming. "She liked to sing and bake cookies. Daddy says she was the best cook ever." Hearing this, Alex let out a low chuckle from across the table. "She really was," he agreed, his voice tinged with nostalgia. For a moment, the heaviness in his eyes lifted, replaced by fond memories. But just as quickly, the shadow returned, darker than before. Later that evening, as Mia tidied up after closing time, she found herself reflecting on everything she'd learned about Alex. He wasn't just a grieving widower struggling to raise his daughter alone. There was guilt buried deep within him, guilt that went beyond losing Claire. She could feel it in the way he flinched whenever someone mentioned her name, in the hollowness of his gaze when he thought no one was looking. Something, or someone, had left scars on his soul, and Mia couldn't shake the feeling that uncovering the truth might be the key to helping him heal. But would he ever trust her enough to share it? As the weeks rolled on, Mia found herself growing closer to Alex and Lily in small, almost imperceptible ways. It wasn't anything dramatic, just moments here and there that added up over time. A shared laugh when Lily spilled syrup all over her pancakes. A quiet thank you from Alex when Mia refilled his coffee without being asked. Even the way he nodded slightly whenever she greeted him felt like progress. But beneath those tiny gestures, Mia could sense something brewing, a tension that Alex was struggling to keep hidden. It wasn't until one chilly December morning that things began to shift. The diner was quieter than usual, thanks to an unexpected snowstorm that had blanketed the town overnight. Most regulars had stayed home, leaving only a handful of customers scattered around the room. Alex and Lily were among them, seated at their usual booth by the window. Outside, the world looked peaceful under its coat of white, but inside, the atmosphere felt heavy with unspoken words. Mia noticed it right away. Alex seemed off, more withdrawn than usual. His shoulders were hunched, his eyes fixed on the steaming cup of coffee in front of him as though it held all the answers to his problems. Lily, sensing her father's mood, sat quietly beside him, coloring in a notebook instead of chattering away like she normally did. Something was clearly weighing on both of them, and Mia couldn't ignore it any longer. Taking a deep breath, she walked over to their table, balancing a fresh pot of coffee in one hand. "Morning," she said softly, offering a warm smile. "Refill?" Alex glanced up briefly before nodding. "Sure," he muttered, pushing his cup toward her. His voice was flat, devoid of its usual politeness. Whatever wall he'd been building around himself lately seemed thicker than ever. Mia poured the coffee slowly, buying herself a moment to think. Then, deciding to take a risk, she leaned against the edge of the booth. "You okay?" she asked, gently, keeping her tone casual. "You seem distracted today." For a split second, Alex froze. He stared at her, his dark eyes searching hers as if trying to gauge whether she truly cared or was just making idle conversation. Finally, he let out a long sigh. "Just tired," he said, though his voice betrayed more than fatigue. Mia nodded, pretending to accept his answer even though she didn't believe it for a second. Instead of pressing further, she turned her attention to Lily. "How about you, kiddo? What are you drawing?" The little girl brightened instantly, flipping her notebook around to show off her artwork. "It's a snowman," she announced proudly. "See? I gave him a scarf and a hat." "That's awesome," Mia said, genuinely impressed. "He looks like he's ready for winter." Lily giggled, her earlier shyness melting away. "I like snow," she confided. "Daddy says we might go sledding later if the roads are safe." At the mention of sledding, Alex shifted uncomfortably in his seat. Mia caught the movement and raised an eyebrow. "Sledding, huh? Sounds fun. Been a while since I've done that." "It is fun," Lily chirped, oblivious to her father's discomfort. "Mommy used to take me sledding too. She said it was her favorite part of winter." The room seemed to grow quieter after that. Alex's jaw tightened, and he reached for his coffee cup again, gripping it tightly as if it were a lifeline. Mia hesitated, unsure whether to steer the conversation elsewhere or let it play out naturally. Before she could decide, Lily spoke up again. "Do you miss Mommy, Daddy?" she asked innocently, tilting her head to look at him. Her question hung in the air like frost on a cold morning, sharp and biting. Alex froze, his fingers tightening around the mug. For several seconds he didn't respond. Then, in a voice barely above a whisper, he said, "Every single day." His admission sent a pang through Mia's chest. She'd suspected how deeply Alex missed Claire, but hearing him say it aloud made the weight of his grief tangible. Yet there was something else in his tone, something raw and unresolved. Grief? Yes, but also guilt. She could feel it radiating off him like heat from a fire. Deciding to tread carefully, Mia cleared her throat. "Your mom sounds like she was incredible," she said, looking at Lily. "From what I've heard, she was really special." "She was," Alex agreed quietly, his gaze fixed on the tabletop. "Too special for this world, honestly." There was a pause, filled only by the faint hum of the diner's heater kicking on. Then, surprising even himself, Alex continued. "She deserved better. Better than me, anyway." Mia blinked, caught off guard by his sudden vulnerability. "What do you mean?" she asked, her voice soft but steady. Alex shook his head as if regretting his words already. "Nothing," he mumbled, avoiding her eyes. "Forget I said anything." But Mia wasn't about to let him retreat so easily. Not this time. Placing a gentle hand on the edge of the table, she leaned in slightly. Hey, you don't have to tell me everything, but whatever you're carrying, it's okay to share it. Sometimes talking helps, even if it doesn't fix anything. Her words hung between them, fragile yet sincere. Alex stared at her for a long moment, his expression unreadable. Then, exhaling sharply, he ran a hand through his hair. It's complicated, he admitted finally, and it's not just about losing Claire. There's more to it. Mia waited patiently, giving him space to gather his thoughts. When he didn't elaborate, she offered a small smile. Whenever you're ready, she said simply. I'm here. That evening, as Mia cleaned up after closing time, she replayed the conversation in her mind. Alex's cryptic comment weighed heavily on her. What did he mean by more? Was it related to Claire's death? Or was it something deeper, something he blamed himself for? Her musings were interrupted when she spotted something crumpled under their booth. A napkin. Picking it up, she smoothed it out and froze. Scrawled across the paper in shaky handwriting were the words, I should have told her sooner. Her heart sank. Whatever secret Alex was carrying, it was eating him alive. And Mia knew she couldn't stand by and watch him suffer in silence, not anymore. The discovery of the crumpled napkin changed everything for Mia. Those few words, I should have told her sooner, stuck in her mind like a splinter she couldn't ignore. They haunted her as she closed up the diner that night, replaying, over and over again in her head. What had Alex wanted to tell Claire? Why hadn't he said it when he had the chance? And most importantly, how much of his pain stemmed from whatever he'd left unsaid? Over the next few days, Mia found herself watching Alex even more closely than before. She tried not to make it obvious, but it was hard not to notice the way his hands trembled slightly when he picked up his coffee cup or the faraway look in his eyes whenever someone mentioned Claire's name. It wasn't just grief. It was guilt. Heavy, suffocating guilt that seemed to press down on him with every breath he took. Lily, on the other hand, remained blissfully unaware of her father's inner turmoil. The little girl continued to charm everyone at the diner with her bright smile and endless curiosity. One morning, while waiting for their food, she pulled out her coloring book and proudly showed Mia a picture she'd drawn of her family. This is me, Daddy, and Mommy, she explained, pointing to each figure. See? We're all together. Mia forced a smile, though her heart ached at the innocence of the moment. To Lily, her mother was still very much present, a guiding light who watched over them from somewhere beyond. But for Alex, the absence of Claire felt like an open wound that refused to heal. Every time Lily spoke about her mother, it was as if another layer of salt was being poured into that wound. One afternoon, after a particularly quiet visit, Mia decided to take a step further. As Alex paid the bill and prepared to leave, she stopped him with a gentle question. Hey, do you ever talk to anyone about, everything? He froze, his wallet halfway back into his pocket. What do you mean? He asked cautiously, his voice low. I mean, losing someone you love. It's one of the hardest things anyone can go through, Mia replied, keeping her tone soft and non-judgmental. And I know Lily keeps you going, but sometimes it helps to have someone else to lean on too. Someone outside your circle. Alex hesitated, his jaw tightening. For a moment, Mia thought he might shut her down completely. Instead, he let out a heavy sigh. It's not just about losing her, he admitted, his voice barely above a whisper. It's about what I did, or didn't do, before she was gone. His words sent a shiver down Mia's spine. She nodded slowly, encouraging him to continue. But Alex shook his head, visibly retreating behind the walls he'd built around himself. I can't, he muttered. Not now. Though disappointed, Mia didn't push him. She knew better than to force someone to open up before they were ready. Instead, she offered a small, reassuring smile. Whenever you're ready, I'm here, she said simply. No pressure. As the weeks passed, Alex began opening up bit by bit. It started with small conversations during their visits to the diner. He talked about his work less and shared snippets of life with Claire instead. How they'd met in college, how she'd supported him during the early days of building his business, how her laughter could light up even the darkest rooms. Each story painted a vivid picture of a woman who had been loving, kind, and fiercely devoted to her family. But there were gaps in his narrative, moments he skipped over or glossed past without elaboration. Mia noticed these silences keenly, sensing they held the key to understanding his guilt. Still, she waited patiently, knowing that trust took time to build. One snowy evening when the diner was nearly empty, Alex finally broke his silence in a way that surprised even himself. He and Lily had stayed late, sipping hot chocolate as the storm raged outside. When Lily excused herself to use the restroom, Mia seized the opportunity to sit across from him. "You miss her a lot, don't you?" she asked gently. Breaking the quiet hum of the room, Alex nodded, staring into his mug. "Every day feels heavier without her," he confessed. "But it's not just missing her, it's regret. So much regret." Mia leaned forward slightly, her expression soft but attentive. "Regret for what?" He hesitated, his fingers tracing the rim of his mug. Then, exhaling sharply, he began to speak. "Claire got sick a few years ago. Cancer. Rare type. There weren't many treatment options available, so we looked into experimental therapies, clinical trials, new drugs, anything that might give her a fighting chance." His voice cracked slightly, and he paused to steady himself. "I had invested heavily in a pharmaceutical company, working on treatments for rare diseases. At first I thought it was my chance to save her, to make things right, but then what?" Mia prompted softly. "The trial failed," Alex finished, his voice hollow. "People died, not just Claire, but others too. Patients, who had placed their hope in something I helped fund. After that, I pulled out my investment. It saved my company, but—" He trailed off, tears welling in his eyes. "I abandoned them, all of them, including Claire." The weight of his confession settled between them like a thick fog. Mia sat stunned, her heart breaking for the man in front of her. She understood now why he carried such immense guilt. It wasn't just the loss of Claire that haunted him. It was the choices he'd made leading up to it. "You did what you thought was best," she said finally, her voice firm yet compassionate. "You couldn't have known how things would turn out." Alex shook his head bitterly. "That doesn't change the fact that I ran away, from her memory, from my mistakes, from everything." Mia reached across the table, placing a comforting hand over his. "Running doesn't mean you're weak," she said. "It means you're human, but staying, that's where the real courage comes in. Staying and facing the pain, the guilt, the memories. That's how you start healing." Her words hung in the air, simple yet profound. Alex stared at her, his eyes glistening with unshed tears. For the first time in years, he felt seen. Not as a billionaire or a grieving widower, but as a flawed, hurting person trying to find his way back to himself. The storm outside had settled into a steady drizzle by the time Alex finished pouring out his heart to Mia. The diner was quiet, save for the soft hum of the overhead lights and the rhythmic ticking of the clock on the wall. It felt like the world had paused, allowing him to unburden himself without interruption. For the first time in years, Alex didn't feel the need to hide behind polished words or rehearsed smiles. He let the guilt, the regret, and the pain spill out. All the things he'd buried deep inside because facing them felt impossible. Mia listened intently, her expression calm but empathetic. She didn't interrupt or offer platitudes. She simply sat there, holding space for him as he unraveled. When he finally fell silent, tears streaming down his face, Mia reached across the table and placed a gentle hand over his. "You're not alone in this," she said softly. "Whatever you're carrying, you don't have to carry it by yourself anymore." Her words struck a chord deep within Alex. He'd spent so long isolating himself, convinced that no one could understand the weight of his mistakes. But sitting here now, with Mia's unwavering presence and quiet strength, he realized how wrong he'd been. Maybe it wasn't too late to start letting people back in, to rebuild the bridges he'd burned in his quest for self-preservation. Over the next few weeks, Alex began to change. Not dramatically, but in small, noticeable ways. He started volunteering at a local charity that supported families dealing with rare diseases, channeling his wealth and influence into causes close to Claire's heart. At first, he kept his involvement low-key, hesitant to draw attention to himself. But as time went on, he found solace in helping others navigate the same struggles Claire had faced. It wasn't redemption. It would never be. But it was a start. Lily noticed the shift in her father almost immediately. Gone was the distant man who seemed perpetually lost in thought. In his place was someone more present, more engaged. He laughed more often, played games with her after dinner, and even joined her sledding one snowy afternoon. Watching him throw snowballs and chase her down the hill, Lily couldn't remember the last time she'd seen him so carefree. It made her smile wider than ever. For Mia, seeing Alex transform was both heartwarming and bittersweet. Their bond had grown stronger over the months, evolving from casual acquaintances to something deeper. She admired his resilience, his willingness to confront his demons head-on despite the pain it caused. Yet she also knew she could never replace Claire. No one could. All she could do was walk alongside him, offering support and friendship when he needed it most. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of orange and pink, Alex returned to the diner alone. It was unusual for him to come without Lily, and Mia raised an eyebrow in curiosity as she approached his booth. "Where's your shadow today?" she teased lightly, referring to Lily. "She's at a sleepover," Alex replied with a grin, looking more relaxed than she'd ever seen him. "First one since we moved back. I figured I'd treat myself to some pie while she's living it up with her new friends." Mia chuckled, sliding a slice of cherry pie in front of him. "Well, enjoy. You deserve it." As Alex dug into his dessert, their conversation turned reflective. He talked about how much Lily had grown over the past year, how proud he was of the person she was becoming. Then, unexpectedly, he brought up Claire again. This time, however, his tone wasn't heavy with guilt or sorrow. It was filled with gratitude. "Claire always believed in me," he said, staring at his fork as if searching for the right words. "Even when I didn't believe in myself. She saw the good in me even when I couldn't see it myself. And now—" He paused, glancing up at Mia. "Now I feel like maybe I'm starting to see it too." Mia smiled, her chest swelling with pride. "That's huge," she said earnestly. "You've come such a long way since you first walked through those doors." Alex nodded, his gaze drifting toward the window. Outside, the rain had stopped, leaving behind glistening puddles that reflected the fading light. "It's funny," he mused. "I came back here thinking I wanted to escape, to run away from everything that reminded me of my mistakes. But instead, I ended up finding exactly what I needed. A chance to heal." His words lingered in the air, simple, yet profound. Mia watched him silently, marveling at how far he'd come. The man sitting across from her bore little resemblance to the broken, guilt-ridden figure who had first stepped into the diner months ago. He still carried scars, visible and invisible, but they no longer defined him. Instead, they served as reminders of the battles he'd fought and won. Later that night, as Mia closed up the diner, she couldn't help but reflect on the journey she'd witnessed. Helping Alex hadn't been easy. There were moments of frustration, doubt, and uncertainty along the way. But watching him take steps toward healing made every challenge worth it. She realized then that healing wasn't about erasing the past or fixing everything that was broken. It was about learning to live with the pieces, finding beauty in the cracks and moving forward despite the pain. When Alex left that evening, he paused at the door and turned back to look at her. "Thank you," he said sincerely, his voice steady. "For everything." Mia smiled, feeling a warmth spread through her chest. "Anytime," she replied simply, and though neither of them said it aloud, they both knew this was just the beginning. Spring arrived quietly in the small town, bringing with it the promise of renewal. The snow melted away, revealing patches of green grass and budding flowers. Birds chirped cheerfully outside the diner's windows, and the air smelled fresh after months of winter chill. Inside, the atmosphere mirrored the season's optimism. Regulars greeted each other warmly, sharing stories about their plans for the warmer months ahead. For Alex, this spring marked a turning point, not just in his personal life but in how he saw himself and the world around him. Mia noticed the change immediately. Alex came to the diner as often as before, but now there was a lightness to him that hadn't been there before. His shoulders weren't hunched anymore. His eyes didn't dart away when someone asked how he was doing. Instead, he engaged fully in conversations, laughing at jokes and offering thoughtful advice when prompted. He even joked with Mia about her overpriced pie, teasing her good-naturedly while still ordering an extra slice to take home. Lily, too, seemed happier than ever. She'd settled into school beautifully, making friends and thriving in her new environment. On weekends, she dragged Alex to the park or insisted they visit the local library for storytime sessions. Watching them together, Mia couldn't help but marvel at how far they'd come. They were no longer two people drifting through life separately. They were a team again, bound by love and shared memories. One sunny morning, as Alex sat sipping his coffee at their usual booth, Lily bounded into the diner clutching a colorful drawing. "Look what I made," she exclaimed, holding it up proudly for Mia to see. The picture showed 3 figures standing beside a tree, labeled clearly, Daddy, me, and Mommy. Beneath the tree, written in shaky block letters, were the words, "Our family forever." Mia felt tears prick her eyes as she looked at the drawing. It was simple yet profound, a testament to Lily's unwavering belief that family wasn't defined by absence, but by connection. Turning to Alex, she saw him staring. At the picture, his expression soft and tender. "She gets it from you," Mia said gently, nodding toward the artwork. "That kind of hope doesn't come from nowhere." Alex chuckled, though his voice wavered slightly. "She's got Claire's imagination," he admitted, running a hand through his hair. "Sometimes it feels like having her here is enough to keep us both going." Mia nodded, understanding exactly what he meant. Claire might not have been physically present, but her spirit lived on in every laugh, every memory, and every act of kindness Alex and Lily shared. It was a legacy neither of them took for granted. As the weeks went by, Alex continued to honor Claire's memory in meaningful ways. He organized a fundraiser for the hospital where Claire had received treatment, donating a significant portion of his wealth to support research and patient care. At the event held in the town hall, he gave a heartfelt speech that brought many to tears, including Mia, who watched from the back of the room with pride swelling in her chest. "Claire taught me so much about love, resilience, and the importance of giving back," Alex said, his voice steady despite the emotion thick in the air. "She believed in helping others, even when times were tough. And though I failed her in ways I'll never forgive myself for, I want to spend the rest of my life living up to the example she set." When he stepped down from the podium, the crowd erupted into applause. People lined up to shake his hand, thanking him for his generosity and courage. But Alex barely noticed any of it. His focus was on Lily, who stood beaming beside him, holding tightly to the locket around her neck. In that moment, surrounded by love and gratitude, Alex felt a sense of peace he hadn't known was possible. Back at the diner, life returned to its familiar rhythm. Alex and Lily became fixtures once more, stopping by for breakfast or lunch whenever they could. Mia cherished these visits, knowing how much they meant to all 3 of them. Their bond had grown into something deeper than friendship. It was trust, built brick by brick over countless cups of coffee and late-night conversations. One crisp spring evening, as Mia wiped down tables after closing time, Alex approached her with a hesitant smile. "I owe you a lot," he said, his tone earnest. "More than I can ever repay." Mia laughed softly, waving off his words. "You don't owe me anything," she replied. "Helping you wasn't about repayment. It was about being there when you needed someone." Alex nodded, his gaze lingering on hers for a long moment. Then, surprising both of them, he added, "Still, I wanted to say thank you for believing in me when I didn't believe in myself." for reminding me that healing isn't about forgetting. It's about finding a way to move forward. Mia's throat tightened as she absorbed his words. She'd never imagined playing such a pivotal role in someone else's journey, but seeing Alex stand tall and resilient made every difficult moment worth it. Smiling, she reached out to squeeze his hand. "You did the hard part," she said, simply. "All I did was remind you that you weren't alone." They stood there for a moment, the quiet hum of the diner wrapping around them like a comforting blanket. Outside, the stars twinkled brightly against the darkening sky, signaling the start of a new chapter, for Alex, for Lily, and for Mia herself. In the days that followed, Alex began taking steps toward rebuilding his life in ways he'd never expected. He started mentoring young entrepreneurs in the community, sharing his knowledge and experience without expecting anything in return. He also reconnected with old friends, mending relationships he'd let fade during his years of isolation. Through it all, he kept Claire's memory alive, not as a source of pain but as a guiding light. For Mia, watching Alex transform was bittersweet. She knew their paths would eventually diverge, as they inevitably did in life. But she also knew she'd played a part in helping him find his way back to himself. That knowledge filled her with a quiet satisfaction, a reminder that sometimes the smallest gestures could make the biggest impact. On a warm spring afternoon, as lilacs bloomed outside the diner, Alex stopped by one last time before heading out of town for a business trip. Sitting in their usual booth, he glanced around the room with a nostalgic smile. "This place saved me in more ways than one," he said, his voice tinged with gratitude. Mia grinned, leaning against the counter. "Don't give us too much credit. You're the one who did the heavy lifting." Alex chuckled, shaking his head. "Maybe, but I wouldn't have made it without you." As he walked out the door, Lily waved enthusiastically from the car window. Mia waved back, her heart full. Though their story was far from over, she knew they'd carry each other's lessons forward, proof that even in the darkest moments hope could bloom again.